Joining us now is Ken Roberts. He's a contributor for Forbes, an American business magazine, and founder and president of WorldCity, a market research company. Ken, U.S. exports to China jumping to the highest amount since 2017. What do you make of all of this?
Well, a couple of things happened there. One, China's economy is one of the few in the world that actually rebounded out of the coronavirus pandemic. So it needed those soybeans that we were discussing there. It needed the oil, needed that cotton and corn, had uses for that LNG and other petroleum gases, So it was demand. China had a need for those things, and the United States had those things.
Kim, we're looking at pictures of soybeans just now. Let's talk about them because a lot of farmers in the Midwest suffered as a result of the trade war. China went elsewhere for soybeans. As you know, Brazil shipping millions of tons of soybeans during the trade war. What's the landscape look like now, do you say?
Well, ironically, a lot of the same companies in the United States and in Brazil are in that business. So it's, on some level, from a company perspective, it's somewhat of a shift. But there are people in the United States that did suffer. There were payments made by the Trump administration to those people, but what those farmers want more than anything is to sell their soybeans. So the good news is that China came on strong in 2020 in buying those soybeans again.
You heard in Nick's report a narrowing of the trade deficit. It seemed to be something that was fixated on by former President Trump. Is that an area where we should be focused on?
So what's interesting about that is the trade deficit with China decreased, but the U.S. trade deficit hit a record $905 billion. And this is one of the things that's very difficult about a trade war, is there can be shifts. So a fair amount of trade has shifted to Vietnam. Taiwan's trade was up. Trade moves. Trade is the supply chain has proven itself to be remarkably nimble, particularly in a very difficult time. Trade deficits should be less of a concern than they have traditionally. I happen to have a large trade deficit with my barber, and I don't care. I'm happy to have him cut my hair. I have surpluses with other people who pay me for my services. So trade deficits are not totally insignificant, but they don't matter nearly as much as we pay attention to them. One of the reasons is because a lot of what goes into products that are shipped across borders is parts, right? Component parts that go into finished products. So the classic example is given of in the manufacture of an automobile in this hemisphere between Mexico and the United States, let's say, parts go back and forth 7 times. So we pay way too much attention to deficits.
Ken, you just reminded me I need a haircut, so thanks for that. China would like to see Biden take his foot off the gas when it comes to tariffs. How likely is that?
The challenge there is where is the pressure going to come from? I would personally like to see some opening. I was heartened for his nomination of Catherine Tai as the USTR because she speaks Mandarin, because she's young. I don't know the role. I mean, a lot of the conventional wisdom is with an economy that's in tough shape, with the global pandemic still ongoing and very serious in the United States, trade is going to be put on the back burner. But trade is part and parcel of all these things. We live in a global economy today, and in the case of the China trade war, we're talking about the world's 2 largest economies. I think it's, I'm hopeful, but I don't know where that hope comes from sometimes.
And obviously, the United States and China interconnected, intertwined in many respects when it comes to trade. Let me ask you about, I had a recent conversation with former U.S. Ambassador Max Baucus to China, and he seems to think there'll be a decoupling between these 2 countries on the high-tech front, this race for supremacy in 5G and some of these other leading technologies. Do you see that as well?
That's a whole different ball of wax. That's a thorny one. I think people all over the world have some issues related to privacy, and this plays into that whole issue, and what governments have what information, what have access to what information. This one's probably a little bit above my pay grade, but I do think there will be some real challenges in that area. What I'd like to see us solve is the typical merchandise trade, whether it be apparel or computers or cell phones or whatever it might be.
All right. Ken Roberts joining us. Thanks so much via Skype. Appreciate it.
Thank you.